Okay, very well. So first of all, we're going to have some presentations now, but you can all participate. You can participate in the questions, in the requests that you may have. Who has Twitter? Come on, make me happy. What do students use now? Give me a name. What do you use? WhatsApp then? What else? Obviously Facebook, Snapshot maybe? Okay, so on this hashtag you can tweet the shape Milano. Now you can send in a question, you can send an idea, a request for the presentations you will be listening to, and some of them will be sent to the screen, and at the end of the presentation I will ask the question directly live to the speaker. So it's a very nice way to take part, and you can also tell us what your opinions are. Okay, so we're going to start with the CEO of Piaggio Fast Forward from Harvard professor, a brain which is amazing. We have Jeffrey Schnapp.
Hey Jeffrey, how are you doing? You okay? Right, welcome. So Jeffrey, you speak a great Italian. Will you do your presentation in English or in Italian?
I was kind of thinking of maybe doing it in German or Chinese.
Jeffrey parla un italiano fenomenale.
Jeffrey speaks an amazing Italian, even better than mine. I mean, so I'll see you later then, Jeffrey. Thank you. Good morning, Milan, then, and I'd like to greet you all. And this is like a dream for me to come true, which is to be on a catwalk here in Milan to show you a new model, which is an extremely chic model, an extremely elegant model, which is this shirt here. It's the premiere for this shirt, and so you can even dream about it, but then maybe a lucky person will be able to take a shirt home when he will leave the meeting. So this is just to introduce my presentation. I would like to start off as an introduction with a very, very concise presentation of the fantastic team that we have built, that we have set up for Piaggio Fast Forward. They are scattered in this room, so I hope I will be able to see them all. I have my friend Greg Lean, Sasha Hoffman, Beth Altringer. Then we have also here our board of advisors, Doug Brent, we have Nicholas Negroponte from Media Lab, we have Jeffrey Nail from Google. So it's an amazing group of people who together will be able, I'm sure, to tackle this issue and to introduce and talk about the possible mobility solutions for this new millennium. As Roberto Colaninno said, this is one of the most urgent and pressing problems and issues that humanity has to face now. And it is facing it in many different ways. You know, there are different realities, such as the ones of the developing countries. Then we have the urban realities where the movement has been stopped and has stopped for decades. And so new types of mobility which are very different, and you know, and Piaggio Fast Forward is really thinking about all of these different challenges and is trying to find the right solution, the right answers to these different challenges. So I would like to briefly talk about the format of this event. It's called The Shape of Things to Come. So when we talk about shape, obviously we're not talking about a true shape, but we're talking about how concepts, ideas, fantasies, imagination become reality of prototypes, of design, of models. So we're talking about very heterogeneous things in this context. We will be talking about biotechnology, mobile architecture, software, hardware. We're going to be talking about new corporate culture, new consumption models. But in all of this variety, there will be a common denominator, which is that a leitmotif, which is that of mobility. Mobility is all over the place, is everywhere in all of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So the things to come. So obviously these are things that can be imagined, that will be invented, that need to be innovated, but there are also things which are rooted in an in-depth reflection about the past. Very often, innovation are the results of, the recovery of certain old projects, for instance. So in my short presentation, I will be only talking about one aspect of this emerging reality, which will condition all of the various aspects of our way of living in the space, which is the fact that data are ubiquitous. And obviously, this is an important fact now for our existence. Now, all of the actions undertaken by humans over the centuries, the fact of moving, the fact of reading, of communicating. I mean, all of these traditionally left some signs that we are all familiar with, such as, for instance, the smoke coming out from a motorbike rather than a draft of air that may come. I mean, they left some signs. But in our era, we have a new thing, which is a very recent thing in the story of humanity. All of these daily reality produce trails of data. These are growing at an amazing speed. So the question that one can ask him or herself when we think about the potential for these data to really modify, to change our habits and behaviors is what can be done with these data. Because obviously raw data alone don't do anything. They don't have a communication capacity. Quite the contrary. So it is when instead we start creating models that we not only collect this material, but we can also build this entire world, which is like a digital craftsman-like world that knows how to express from these data, can give meaning to these data. And it is only then that we can really start to sculpt these data and transform them into elements of our daily experiences. I'm going to show you 3 examples of sectors where I am involved in with my activity. So not so much for Piaggio Fast Forward, but in my scientific activity. It's like an archive. In this case, you are looking at 150 years of trees planted in a botanical garden. This is the archive, which is represented with this type of data visualization, where you can see the entire history with just one interactive animation that tells us the story of 8,000 objects, practically. Let's take another example. This is, for instance, the circulation and the spreading of the printing material. So this was built on the basis of the bibliographical catalogue of 5 of the most important libraries in the world. And it is like a cartography, which has a precision that exceeds all of the studies made in centuries of work on the history of printed material. But in 5 minutes, it tells us the entire story. Now, this is the inventory, for instance, of all of the collections of the Harvard museums. This is represented instead like a planetarium. So here you've seen just 3 examples of the enormous expressive power of this material, which is not only institutional material, it's not only collected data. These are the data which belong to our lives, and this allows us to make new experiences, to have new forms of expression. For instance, if one thinks about the fact that throughout the history of human civilization, that we've lived between ants and elephants, we have thought that certain objects were big, such as mountains, for instance. But now we are living instead in a world where we have access to micro and macro scales of data, of information, which thanks to these techniques are increasingly easy to use, and that allow us to live on other scales too, to experience phenomena within which we can be immersed, but that go well beyond our cognitive capabilities. For instance, this is a cartography of what I did on my keyboard. This was, for instance, last week, one morning in last week. There are micro gestures I made I'm not even aware of. Or, for instance, this is a trip with all of the various places where one stopped. So we've got all of these techniques, these emerging techniques that allow me to self-represent myself, to have a self-representation of myself in my world of connections, of relationships, of messages with other people. We've got so many tools now that are beginning to condition my memory, my perception of who I am, or with who I connect, with whom I talk. And this is a world which I think will increasingly come out and will increasingly become crucial. And this works not only on an individual level, on a micro level, but it also is can be applied to the way, for instance, in which collective memories are built, the archives, the historical archives. I'm showing you some screenshots here, for instance, of a collective archive, which has been created by Harvard. This is for the documentation on the earthquakes in Japan. The earthquake of 2011 in Japan. So this has been built on the basis of 9 million objects that go from tweets, obviously, that have some tags, which are geochronological, which are amazingly precise, up to, for instance, video documents, people talking, so all types of different documents. And what is really nice about it, and what is also fun about it, is that this transforms the memory of how you build an event. For instance, here I can work on 1/1000th of a second here. So from a macro vision, I go down to this extremely micro vision, and this is obviously very different. This has changed things also for historians, for the way we see our existence and we see our activity. So in these last minutes, I would like to close, I would like to wind up with the talking about mobility. Obviously, mobility is an absolutely fascinating topic for us, and it is the basic element. It lays the foundation, let's say, of all of the work that we are doing at Piaggio Fast Forward. Moving has always meant living for many human beings, for all human beings, and to move well, to move at the right speed, to move with the right freedom has always meant moving better, to move more freely, to live more freely, to live a better life, to have a better quality of life. So the topic of mobility is nothing new in reality. It's always been crucial in the history of humanity. And I mean, the inventiveness of humanity can be perceived in many different stages in the development of mobility. I'd like to go back to the beginning of the past century, when we find, for instance, this lovely lady, Florence Priscilla, Lady Norman. She was a suffragette who was a scandal for the London society with her lovely autoped. We are in 1916. And she was going around quite freely around London without really respecting what at the times were the correct behavioural standards for a woman. And this is just to say that the problem of mobility is to invent types of mobility that also express our social values, our belief and our perception of who we are and who we want to be. And this has always been crucial in the history of civilization. We can see another example here. We have a French boy who around 1919 was carrying an early folding scooter with him. So we have this problem of something light, something portable. All these are problems and issues that have very, very profound roots. So the new context we are facing, where we have this enormous amount of data on the one hand and these vehicles on the other, and this desire to move, and the continuation of a narrative that dates back to to ancient times even, I would say. So in this story we have the Vespa, which is an iconic and central object, because the Vespa, just like that autoped of Lady Norman, is an object that has completely modified and modified the way in which world cultures have interpreted that freedom of movement, which is absolutely so important for our social lives. Vespa, which is the invention of Mr. Colanino, is something that the Scagno is something that has fallen down from the sky, because obviously they were producing airplanes during the wars, in the midst of the war, during the bombing, with the destroyed landscapes and terrible infrastructures. The Vespa was there and arrived, and not to be a motorbike, but something more similar to an airplane. In fact, all of the technical elements contained in the Vespa have been borrowed, let's say, from the, aircraft technologies. So the question I ask myself within Piaggio Fast Forward is as what follows. So what is the new vehicle for the new millennium, which is the Vespa, in an era where big data is part of our daily lives, practically. So, for instance, could it be something like this big invention, which is the Guzzi motorbike with a mechanic flight, let's say, an object that can go up the stairs, get into the houses? Who knows? All of these speculations are based on history, obviously. Also, what could this vehicle be that can take us wherever we want to go? Maybe not to our offices, because probably we will be working from our own houses, but maybe we can go around for a walk, or we can deliver something, we can do home deliveries with this object. I mean, these are all the questions that we ask ourselves, especially, in the average scale, so between the drone that we talk even too much about and the car. What's in between that? How big, how portable is it? With what engine will it use? I have shared all of these questions, which are part of the current debate on mobility, with others. And if you want to have an answer to that question mark, well then, stay tuned. Thank you very much. Very well. I have a question for the audience first. How many of you... Very frankly, how many of you have a personalized, a customized cartography of the use of your keyboard? How many of you? How can you do that? I mean, yes, I did one yesterday, maybe, but how do you do a personal cartography? Do you have a scanner? How does it work? No, you just have to use practically some tools. It's the tools that hackers use to invade your personal space. But you can use it for this other purpose. These are the operations which I believe that allow you to see the creativity, the productivity of this world that we inhabit. So we have put together some questions from the audience. There's another thing also, I can't resist, I have to ask it straight away. Are there any journalists here? Can you please close your ears for a moment, switch off cameras? Now, the image of the person on the invisible Vespa. Do you already have it? Can we say something about it? If what's underneath exists, you mean? Well, if it existed, I wouldn't be telling you. I would keep it a secret. Okay, very well. So let's have a look at the questions from the audience. We'll put them together. Can we get the slide? Oh, thank you. A big round of applause for technicians. They've done an enormous and excellent job, and they've been here since 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So fast forward, what direction, what real or imaginary place should we move to, and should we look at to go beyond? So what is the direction, what is the place of fast forward? Well, it doesn't have only one answer, because obviously mobility is mobile, and so it lends itself to many different interpretations, many uses, many needs as well. And so I think that the question maybe should be reformulated. So what are the dreams, we could ask? What are our desires? What are the desires that, we want to achieve amongst us dealing with transport and mobility? And we're talking here about imaginary or real places, and this is a very stimulating provocation, because we have this new reality, which is also that connected to our daily lives, where we have this massive presence of data that we produce, that we manage, and so on, that other that have been studied, and it's a reality where the boundary between imaginary and real is very, very blurred, let's say. So it can be seen also in simulated environments to understand. Yes, I think, for instance, that in the sector of, for instance, in the context of a showroom, when one purchases something, I mean, this boundary will become increasingly blurred between imagination and reality. Next question, if we can have it. So the physical world and the virtual world merge within objects, creating new scenarios. Towards what ecosystems are we moving? Well, it's quite similar to the previous question. It goes hand in hand with the previous question. The world has always been a hybrid world. We live between material, physical, palpable realities, and then we have, on the other hand, ideas, dreams, and so data add themselves to are an additional layer on this invisible things. In the case of a city, in the case of a journey through a landscape, obviously the question as a designer or as an engineer that one should ask him or herself is, what does it add? What is the added value to my experience? Are these information? Is it information that I need, or do I need more of a qualitative thing, or do I need more of an aesthetic thing? And which becomes, let's say, the key to a better experience, a more intense experience. In your presentation, you focused on the importance of seeing, actually visualizing data. I see a lot of companies that are flooded with data, but then the problem is, who looks at these data? How are they interpreted? If you visualize them in an understandable manner, this obviously helps you. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to underline. This art, which is a new form of rhetoric, is a very craftsman-like for the moment. We're just at the beginning of the construction of new codes to express this complexity, which goes well beyond of our cognitive skills, practically. We can't look at 250,000 works of art at the same time. But data, this type of visualization, open a door and it allows us to be able to narrate this data in a more customized manner. And this is a huge potential even for the sector of mobility. Maybe one last question. I see that you have all of these questions appearing. Should the future scare us or not? We've got very much this topic of fear and the future. To what extent is it a problem? To what extent is it instead an opportunity? Well, I believe that if the present and the past scare us, also the future will scare us if we fear the past and the present. So in any historical and cultural context, do you need to find where the passion lies, where the fun lies? So my answer is no. My answer to this question is no. So Jeffrey Schnapp, thank you very much, and I will see you later.